So our military forces now are all using laser-guided weapon systems, every branch of the military. So our special forces, they will not take a weapon that does not have a laser-guided system. When my husband flew the F-117 stealth fighter, he would drop the laser on a specific window on the 3rd floor of a building. From 10,000 feet above, when he would drop that bomb, it was going to hit the exact spot where the laser was every single time.
Wow.
The same thing happens with all of our weapon systems in the rest of the military. They are incredibly precise, and it is part of what makes the U.S. military a fighting force to be reckoned with. But that military spouse at home, she or he, they have a laser-guided weapon.
Wow.
And that is
Yeah.
the weapon of prayer. You are calling down the force of heaven to get involved.
Welcome to Crazy Little Thing Called Marriage. I'm Dr. Greg Smalley.
And I'm Erin Smalley. Today we'd like to start off with something special, a praise report from one of our listeners.
Yeah.
What a great way to start off. So Cindy says that her son, Cody, had gotten a divorce years ago and had been having a hard time with his ex-wife. Neither Cody's son nor his ex-wife were walking with the Lord. Cody was active in the military and suffered from PTSD. He then struggled with addiction. But as Cindy exclaims, God is so good. Her son was healed from his addiction and is walking with the Lord again.
That's great.
Yeah, Cody's older brother baptized not only Cody, but his 2 children as well.
Wow.
Wow. She says, thank you, Greg and Erin, for sharing your life, your hurts, and healing on the podcast.
Wow.
Wow.
That's powerful. And one of the things I love from you as our listeners, when you're willing to share your life and your struggles and your transparency with us. And
Yes.
we love that. That's such a great way to connect. So thanks for doing that.
Thank you, Cindy, for writing in. It just touches us to know that we've been an encouragement to anybody, especially our tribe, our people. And so thank you for letting us know just that we can rejoice with you, and other listeners can rejoice with you as well.
Well, later we're going to share a listener's date night disasters, and I always love these. It makes me feel normal to hear your disastered stories when you have a date night. So we've asked you to send those in, and you have done a great job. We're so glad that you've done that. Keep doing that for us.
Then we're going to have a listener voicemail question about anxiety that we're going to answer as well.
Well, with 4th of July next weekend, we thought we'd give some encouragement to our military marriages. So our guest today is Beth Runkle. Beth's husband, Brian, served in the Air Force for 25 years. And Beth is going to talk about the unexpected marital struggles the two of them had to overcome during his active years of service. Beth has written a great book called Another Move, God. And she also shares some ideas on how military spouses can connect with others even though their families have to relocate about every 2 to 5 years. Well, with that in mind, we started the conversation by asking Beth how many times that they've moved. And I tell you, I was stunned by her answer.
How many moves did you have?
We moved 14 times.
Wow.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yes.
I think part of the reason for me is that God knew that I had a propensity to want to be in control and would try to hold on to things of this world. So he said, I'm going to keep taking them away until you realize I am the only thing that you can truly hold on to.
Wow. Powerful.
Well, maybe for us as civilians, maybe give us some insight into what's that like as a military family.
Yeah, I think a lot of people appreciate our freedoms, but they don't understand, what it causes.
Right, that's fair.
Specifically, I'm the spouse, so I never wore the uniform, but I did move every 1.7 years.
Wow.
So that's moving your church, your kids' schools, all of your household goods. Then your spouse is gone a lot on what we call temporary duty. So it's basically a business trip or deployments or training. They're always doing training. So you're constantly having to do this dance between my spouse is home, my spouse is gone, my spouse is home, they're gone. you often have to deal with the danger that, they're going to encounter either in their training missions or what we call downrange in combat. And then often the military member comes back changed because what they have encountered on the battlefield or even just in the environment around the battlefield. So it is a lot. And you're also trying to help your kids cope with all of this. But it is great opportunity to cling to the Lord and then also be on mission to those around you. Because our military marriage would never have survived had we not found the Lord. And statistically, divorce is a little bit higher in military couples, and then it gets even higher when they get to be veterans. So I like to encourage people, this is a tremendous opportunity and venture. You get to be a missionary, but you're being moved around by the military.
Kind of beyond the moving, some of what you've just talked about, like what's going on within the relationship. Like you said, boy, had we not found the Lord, I don't think our marriage would have survived. Like what are some of the unique dynamics that are going on within a military marriage?
Well, I mentioned there's the dance. He's here, he's gone. He's here, he's gone. Trying to stay faithful while they're gone. But then one of the big issues that I had to deal with, which is a very prevalent issue, because I've actually done another podcast on this topic, and it's the most popular thing I've done. It's how do I deal with the bitterness and resentment I have towards my spouse, or perhaps the military, or in my case, it was both.
Yeah.
I found we moved 3 times our first year of marriage. 2 months into being at that next location, my husband deployed to the Middle East. He would deploy 4 times in 2 years. Wow. So I found myself, and my husband had not prepared me, and that is God's sovereignty, actually. I did not know what to expect. I was not raised in a military family. And I'm thankful because I have a really good man, and I wouldn't have married him. But I found myself thinking, like, this is horrible. What have I gotten myself into? This is not at all what I expect. In fact, I even said that to my husband one day. I said, what about me? What about my career? What about I want to do? And he literally looked at me and put his hands up and he said, I don't know what you want me to do. I'm in the military. So I had to get over that.
So is the bitterness more towards the military and just all these dynamics that you mentioned? Was it towards him? Is it all of the above? Like, what was the bitterness for you?
I think it's both, because also my husband's great. And one of the great things that he always did, which I would encourage anybody who wears the uniform, he would say, I have to go do this exercise, do this training, do this deployment. I wish I didn't have to. You are my priority. I wish I could be here, but I can't, right? Yeah. He was very gracious about it. But there's just so much that is outside of their control. I mean, we had vacations canceled, trips canceled, things with family canceled, because the military is always changing things, and duty calls. My husband did a great job about prioritizing me when he could. But there are just times that they can't, and you have to learn to understand that. But I think primarily for me, my resentment was towards the military and all the demands it was placing on our life and how much our life was out of our control. But that really negatively impacted our military our marriage, because respect is so important for men. And I didn't understand this yet. I wasn't a believer. But me bad talking the military constantly, and this is what God has called him to, it really is disrespectful. So when I came to realize that, through the Holy Spirit, I began to realize I can't keep bad-mouthing the military, because this is a calling, not unlike a calling that a pastor might have. A calling is something that is a special duty or obligation that someone feels is their special duty to perform. And so I believe that a man or woman serving in uniform has that calling. So I had to not be resentful of that calling, and then ultimately, once we came to Christ, God began to show me that he had a calling on my life as well. No, I didn't wear the uniform, but I could be called to come alongside him to reach those in our midst for the kingdom by sharing Jesus with them.
Yeah. That's good. So how, as a military wife, did you deal with that resentment? How did you became aware of it? You're saying once I came to Christ, I was like, wow, here it is. But how did you deal with that?
I have got several suggestions, and I think it takes a lot of things together. It had to be a huge mind shift. I mean, first of all, I had to come to Christ, and I had to recognize the sovereignty of Christ, and then recognize that this, I could like to call my military life is like my incubator of sanctification. Like God was using it, but I had to see that it was my husband's calling, but I had to do some other things that were going to be life-giving for me. I had to not put all my eggs in my husband's basket for my need for connection with others. I had to prioritize self-care, and I don't mean that in a luxurious, worldly way, but I had to do some things that were going to allow me to be strong when I had to be. So, for example, I realized, okay, a once-a-week babysitter when my husband is deployed is critical, and for my own well-being,
Sanity,
my ability to handle stress and to be able to keep the kids alive and going. For me, Bible study was huge. I really believe in the power of what we put in our minds. I knew that I had to replace the lies of the enemy with the truth, right? What does God say to be true in his word? What does he feel about me? I had to fill my mind with that.
And I'm certain, too, going to Bible study helped you form the community that you talk about being so critical. Was that one way that helped you build that community, or what suggestions do you have?
Yeah, the first few moves, I kind of sat around feeling sorry for myself and waiting for people to come to me. And you do have more of a community sense in the military than civilians, especially if your military member does certain things. There tends to be a little bit better community. But I was getting tired of being lonely. And actually going to my first Bible study, God drew me to it because I was so lonely. And I was tired of being lonely and said, I'm going to do it differently this move.
So an intentional choice.
Yes. But I also had to start taking the initiative in forming relationships. And I think one of the keys there is be willing to go vulnerable quickly. In the military world, your community is constantly changing because either you are moving or they are.
Right.
So I had to learn to go deep quickly. And yes, that was some risk on my part, but I was going to be vulnerable. The first time getting together with somebody for coffee, I might say, we're really struggling with this. Like, I don't have it all worked out. And then right away, we could go into a deep friendship instead of wasting a year being acquaintances because that friend might not be in my life for a long time. One of my dearest friends, we only were together for 9 months. We're still incredibly close. Wow. She was praying for me right when I walked in here. But we only overlapped for those 9 months because we figured out how to be vulnerable, how to go deep quickly. But I think especially with the younger generation, they are so comfortable with their devices. And devices are great. I think they're very useful. I use a device often. But we have to get off those devices and go get that meaningful face-to-face connection that we so desperately need, especially if your spouse is in the military and they're gone often. And you need other people that understand it.
Yeah.
For example, I always feel that being a part of a church community is very helpful and they can be a blessing. But sometimes when I might go and tell my church community, my spouse is deploying again, they might say, oh, bless your heart, or I don't know how you could do that. I know they mean well, but I don't need to hear that. I need to hear, it's okay. God has been faithful before. He's going to be faithful this time, and we're going to pray you through this. And how can we help you? That's one of the ways I want to speak to your audience is how to minister to the military in their midst.
And you're not alone.
Yes.
We're here with you, and we're going to not just say the words, but we're going to show up with you.
Absolutely. Yes.
What about for someone who is way more introverted? Like I think about just in the first 7, 8 years of our marriage, I was in a lot of graduate school. So we moved a lot, and not comparing the two at all, but just saying, I mean, we
it's similar.
definitely
We had
moved
similar
around.
patterns.
And I was always so impressed with Erin, because whenever we would land and, have a new place, as an extrovert, she was just really good at finding those relationships, finding community in a way that was very different than me. So what about for that spouse who's maybe more introverted? Like it's still a struggle for me as an introvert, even now. I see the value of community. I get it all. But man, I just love to be at home.
I feel like you talk about this every show.
And I help
We
him.
probably do.
I set him up on play dates with my friends' husbands. Yes.
Yeah. So what about for that person
Yeah.
who's way more introverted?
Yeah, I think I'm more middle of the road. I learned how to be more extroverted as a survival mechanism
Okay.
to have the support that I needed. There are lots of things, though, on all of the military installations. And because of the ministry I do, I'm familiar with all the branches. There are support groups, especially when your service member is deployed, things that you can get involved in. They're already going to be set up for you, but you have to go. They're not going to come drag you out of your house and make you go. But if you are insecure about going to something alone, invite a friend. Even if it is something for deployed members, I know, because I've been to these things, you can invite your friend to go with you for moral support.
Okay.
But especially when your service member is deployed, you need other people that are going through the same thing. And you have to get out of the four walls of your base house and get some community. Or you can also consider other things that might interest you, hobbies that you have. But you have to be intentional to create that community and not say that your social media friends or your virtual friends that are very
That's
good
your
friends,
community. Yeah.
Right.
that is good community,
Yeah.
but you do need something in person.
It's good.
It's so good. And sometimes you're not going to feel like going. And I know for me, there's times just in this very busy season that I'll get off work and be like, I don't want to go to hang out with these ladies tonight, but I know that it's good
Yeah,
for
because
me.
you have something tonight.
I do,
You
and
were telling me
honestly-
about it, and I was like, I wouldn't leave the house if I
Yeah,
was you.
no, honestly, I'm like, I'd much
Yeah.
rather stay home in my pajamas, but I'm going
Yeah,
because
that's
I know
good.
it's good for me.
Well, and
I know
we all
I need
have
it.
that. We all
Yeah.
have those situations. Evening Bible studies. I don't like to go to evening Bible studies.
Right.
But I never leave that saying, wow, well, that was a big waste of time. I wish I didn't go. Because being around other people, it edifies us. And we need that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I would say if you are choosing not to get involved with people because of your insecurities, you are missing out on a tremendous opportunity to be blessed, but to bless others.
Yes.
That's good.
And sometimes putting the focus on, I'm blessing someone else by doing it takes the pressure off of you.
Yeah, and I've had conversations with a military spouse that I just met where I just really feel something that was said, they'll reach out later. God used that. It was exactly what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
And vice versa. You
Yeah.
know, we
good.
do
Yeah.
that.
So switching gears a little bit, when your husband would deploy, and I've seen this within my counseling practice, often when they deploy or even just being military or first responder, they compartmentalize mentally, emotionally. They learn how to cope in a way to survive the career. What advice do you have for that spouse who's deploying and maybe shutting down their heart to survive, but also for the spouse at home? How do they connect emotionally and spiritually at that deeper level?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that men compartmentalize a lot more than women anyways.
Right.
It amazes
Would you
me
agree?
that my husband can be
Yeah.
super stressed out at work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he pulls out his sleep compartment and pushes in all the other compartments and he goes to sleep. But
Yes. Correct.
I think we have to realize that there's a couple things. I think the spouse at home needs to try to not take it personally and understand this is for safety. But the member that is deployed needs to figure out how to meet them halfway. And what worked for us was set up times to communicate. So I would not just pick up the phone or FaceTime and just reach out because I don't know what's going on.
Right.
And he's going to want to answer because he loves me. But if it is not a good time, that could totally derail me.
Probably not the connection
and I
you're
could
hoping
be
for,
overwhelmed
yeah.
with fear, right? When I
Yes.
really need to be focusing on faith. So we had set connection times.
Awesome.
That doesn't always work out because duty calls and they are, off serving their country in uniform. But when he couldn't do that, he'd communicate, hey, I can't communicate. But the majority of the time, he kept that time, and it was a good time for him, when he could let me back in. I think it's really important to communicate this prior to the deployment.
Yes.
Hey, how are we going to negotiate this? How is this going to work? What's going to work for you? And then during deployment, bring it up again. How's this going? And then when they get back home, communication through all things, and then use multiple streams of communication. Maybe your set time that you were going to have a video call isn't going to be able to happen. Well, you can use Marco Polo. That's a great way. You can text, you can email. I really think all forms of communication, you just got to keep all the streams going so you stay connected.
And what's Marco Polo?
Oh, Marco Polo is an app where you can send video clips back and forth.
I was thinking of the game you play in the pool. I'm like, well, that is one
Greg's
way to
not
communicate.
super tech savvy. I even know what Marco Polo is.
I just know it is the game we played in the pool.
It's a little more personal than
Gotcha.
text, and it
Yeah.
can't be miscommunicated as
Gotcha.
easily as
Okay.
text
That's
can.
great.
Yeah.
That's good. See, I learned something.
You
We're
did.
going to start using Marco Polo
Let's do it.
to do
Except
that.
we're usually together, but we could still use it if you'd like.
So communication, huge. And I love how you frame that let's to the best of our ability talk about what we hope it'll look like once it's going on and adjusting to whatever the inevitable changes are or whatever's not working. Let's keep talking about it. Like this, not personalize it. Let's just keep working to figure out how
And
do
I
we
think
have
setting
this.
the expectation that we are going to keep talking about this so one or the other is not offended when it's brought up.
Yeah.
And it's worth bringing it up if you are offended or hurt that, hey, that's impacting me, but can we try something different? Can we figure something out that works for both of us?
Yeah.
And the biggest time I think this comes into play is actually reintegration after deployment, which I think is the hardest part.
Yeah.
About
Tell us about
deployment.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so reintegration is hard because you've been living separate. I usually have been steering the ship of our home and children
Yes.
and life, and I've been doing it pretty well.
Yeah.
Most military spouses learn to be very independent, but then they come back home. So there are two issues really that needs to be dealt with. One is with the spouse that stayed at home, and the other is with the spouse that went downrange. So the one that stayed back home, you have to actually let your spouse back in. And if it is the male that was the military member, you need to let him back into leadership in the home. But that is a delicate balance because they are coming back often from combat or combat-like situations. They've been on another time zone. They're exhausted. They've probably been working night shifts. And then also they have to decompress from what they just saw and did, which honestly you might not ever find out about. So there has to be a lot of grace. One time when my husband came home, I kind of handed the kids to him and was like, hey, I'm done.
I'm
tapping
exhausted.
out.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah, you're up.
It's you.
Yeah.
And that's not really good because he's exhausted and he has been dealing with airmen who take orders, not toddlers who throw tantrums.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
different. So there has to be an easing back in. But again, you've got to communicate. So prior to deployment, hey, what do you think that you're going to want this to look like? During deployment, right before they come home, hey, what are some expectations?
Yeah.
And then after they're back home. And that can be from how are you going to get involved in parenting the kids again? Because likely their developmental stage has drastically changed. And what I'm doing with them, because with kids, you're always changing. How are you trying to deal with raising children?
Right.
And we never do it right.
Yeah.
But
According to
they
them,
don't
that is
really
correct.
know
Yeah.
what you're doing now. So you got to communicate that, developmental changes, what's going on. But I think it's helpful to allow them to observe for a few days and not expect them to step in and really parent.
Yeah.
So they ease back in. But also, so my expectation is very low, realizing. So I had the time I passed the kids off to him was just tap out I'm done. That was not a good way to deal with it. Another time, he was watching the kids, and I was in the kitchen, and he had just come back from being gone and was tired. He fell asleep. And because I had matured and the Holy Spirit was prevalent, the Lord said, let it go. He's tired.
Yeah.
Don't get upset. You did it by yourself all those days. What's a few more moments?
Yeah.
Just to not say anything. But we have to front grace as we are dealing with each other.
Yeah.
What do you say to the wife that their spouse comes home and they realize, like, life was really peaceful when you were gone, and they're not so sure that they want to reintegrate? How do you encourage that wife?
Yeah. It's hard, but it's necessary, because these are the roles that God has called man and woman to in marriage. God esteems man and woman equally, but he does have roles, and respect is so important to men. So if you're not letting him back in the leadership role, he's going to feel defeated, and he's probably going to respond not well, anger, lash out, because he doesn't feel like he's being respected. So we have to allow him back in, but it's an adjustment. They can't do it 100% the first day, because they've been in warlike situations. But yeah, it's an obedience to the Lord thing. And I would say, for my own self, I had to realize that I wasn't letting him back in well, and that was pride. And me trying to be in control. And I had to surrender that to the Lord.
Which is so hard.
Yeah.
What about for, couples who are you need to work through something. So he's deployed, or let's say he's away on a training mission, something, and something comes up. You've got to deal with it. There's a problem. It's so easy for that to turn into conflict. How did you guys really learn how to manage conflict, or just whatever issues came up while you were apart from each other?
Well, first of all, we call it Murphy's Law. I will not give you a week and something major is going to happen.
Totally.
Every single time it happens. In fact, I began to prepare myself mentally. Okay, so the car's going to break down, the washer's going to break, the electricity is going to go out in the kitchen, you're going to have mold overtake your entire house. These are things that happened. So you have to prepare yourself for that. But also, it comes back to communication. You have to say, hey, when things happen, how do you want me to deal with it? My husband was very okay with me bringing it up just the next time we connected.
Okay.
Some spouses are not. They really need to compartmentalize, and maybe what they're doing is really intense at that time. So you have to communicate that. But my husband was very comfortable with me bringing things. He wanted to be a part of our lives and still help me process. We learned early on that we originally, this is making us sound old, but originally we would only get to talk 10 minutes a week.
Wow.
And so if we started with all the problems, and what they would do is they would actually cut you off at 10 minutes. We were going through a central operator. My husband was living in tents in Saudi Arabia, so it was going through a central operator.
Wow.
And so we learned, we could be cut off and not remind each other, we love you, I'm your teammate, I'm there for you. So we started with I love you, I'm there for you, I'm committed.
Oh, that's
and
good.
let me tell you about the mold.
Nice.
And there were tears sometimes, because it's hard, and I was alone. And one of the hard things about being a military family is you're away from family and really the people that you think you can depend on. But that's when you call up your fellow military families and be like, hey, we got an issue here.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the prayers that would be really good for that, the stay-at-home spouse to offer to that spouse who is away?
Well, first of all, I think that prayer is the most potent weapon that military spouse has. So our military forces now are all using laser-guided weapon systems, every branch of the military. So our special forces, they will not take a weapon that does not have a laser-guided system. When my husband flew the F-117 stealth fighter, he would drop the laser on a specific window on the 3rd floor of a building. From 10,000 feet above, when he would drop that bomb, it was going to hit the exact spot where the laser was every single time.
Wow.
The same thing happens with all of our weapon systems in the rest of the military. They are incredibly precise, and it is part of what makes the U.S. military a fighting force to be reckoned with. But that military spouse at home, she or he, they have a laser guided weapon.
Wow.
And that is
Yeah.
the weapon of prayer. You are calling down the force of heaven to get involved. I love to encourage people to pray Psalm 91 over their spouses. It is known as the soldier psalm, and it's about protection, but you can pray for anything. And it's an incredible, I believe, duty, but it's also going to choose to diffuse the fear that you are struggling with when you take that to God in prayer. Now, I believe Philippians 4:8 is our formula for prayer, right? We name the ways that God has been faithful to us in the past. We remember he is to be thanked for these things.
Yeah.
It builds our faith in our current situations that the same God that's been faithful before is going to be faithful now. And what that does is it diffuses our anxiety and it gives us the peace of Christ. That is what we need to do with all of our fears, but also everything. I mean, we have to pray for our spouse's emotional well-being on deployment or when they're away in training. We have to pray for their physical safety, but also their spiritual.
That's good.
Yep, so good. What would you say to the spouse that's being deployed? How do they pray for their family at home? How do they stay connected? How do they keep the covenant? All of it. While they're in the middle of nowhere, what do you say to them? How do they do that?
Well, communication. But
Communication seems to be a theme.
yes. I do think the most important thing they can do is pray because they are facing their own battles on the battlefield, but at home, the enemy is throwing lies their way.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to listen to those lies, especially when you don't have other adults to talk to. I love my kids, but sometimes you just need to have an adult conversation.
Yes. Go
I
figure.
think there's some practical things that they can do to make it easier for them. I always encourage people, set up lawn care. You get extra pay when you are deployed. Your pay is not taxed by the U.S. government. Use some of that extra money to invest in some things that are going to make life a little bit easier for that spouse at home. Maybe it's a babysitter. Maybe it's lawn care. Maybe it's
Food service.
Right, food delivery. You figure that out. You communicate in advance. I think it's super important to have an accountability partner, both for the spouse that is deployed and the one back at home. It is easy to have an affair when you're apart because it's a long time. And then a rule that my husband and I had is that we did not get together with people of the opposite sex,
Wise.
just to have that as a safeguard. And then porn use is a real problem for the person that is deployed. I would say almost 100% of people use it over there. It's just kind of how you deal with the stress and the time away. And a lot of people think it's okay. But I believe that it is detrimental to your marriage. It's going to cause a lack of intimacy. Also, it's going to allow your sex life when you come back home to be less fulfilling because you've had a higher level of stimulation. Porn addiction leads to depression. It leads to a lack of empathy for others. So a lot of people think it's harmless, but I would say it's going to be the best investment for yourself and your future marriage to not do that. And maybe you need to get the blockers and all the things on your devices because it is such a temptation. And it's you might want to say, well, everybody does it. But if you're really invested in your marriage and you don't want to upset your intimacy, don't do what everybody does.
That's good.
Yeah,
We're called
that's
to be
so
different,
good.
and that is a tremendous investment in your marriage.
That's
for
great.
sure.
How would you coach kind of us as civilians, how to best support military families?
Well, I think a lot of your audience is going to know somebody who's serving in the military. Maybe it's a neighbor, somebody on their kid sports team, or a niece or a nephew. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
We have 1 million military spouses at any one time, and I believe it's 2.5 million that are serving in uniform. So they're everywhere.
Wow.
Their life is hard. And my biggest challenge is that as someone who did not know the Lord when I began this journey as a military spouse, I believe that extending yourself to them in ministry is a pathway to the gospel. That military spouse, first of all, she needs somebody to invite her and welcome her in. Maybe it's just as simple as being the friendly person at your church when you see someone new.
Yeah.
Invite her to do something with you. If her or his spouse is deployed, they're terribly lonely, especially on the weekends, because everybody gets together with their family, and the person with your spouse deployed, they're alone. And that loneliness, man, those hours tick by on the weekends. You don't have to just do something with that one person. Invite them for what you're already doing. You know, hey, we're going to cook out some burgers. You want to join us? And it can be with your family. They just need to be around people. It can be as simple as offering to bring them a meal or take their kids for 2 hours or have a play date. That might even be better because they need adult conversation. Or just something as simple as buying that $5 coffee card with a note, hey, I'm thinking of you. I know it's hard, and I just wanted you to know I care. You have no idea how far something like that can go into helping them see the love of God.
Wow.
But especially around the holidays, they need help with their Christmas lights to put their tree up. And honestly, they need stuff to do because the busier they are, the less prevalent it is that their service member is gone. But think about, for your kids, if you couldn't put up your tree. Because your service member is gone. And a lot of times military spouses hear from other well-meaning people, let me know if you need anything. That is kind, but what they really need is, hey, Beth, I know your spouse is gone. I'm going to bring you dinner on Tuesday
Just show
night.
up and do it. Don't ask.
Or I know your spouse is gone. What day this week would it work for me to have your kids at my house for 2 hours?
That's so good. So be specific. For
Yes.
sure. So as a military wife who's been around the world, multiple moves, you get it, after 25 years of amazing service, will you pray for that military wife that is at home maybe feeling lonely, sad, depressed, disconnected?
Yes. Lord, I just thank you for the military spouse, man or woman, that is sitting there right now, Lord. I pray as they hear my voice, Lord, that they would feel, Lord, that you see them. Just as in the account of Genesis, when you saw Hagar, who was oppressed and down and lonely, Lord, and you told her you saw her. In fact, she called you the God who sees. Lord, I pray right now that that spouse would feel seen by you, feel how much you care for him or her. Lord, I pray that they would realize that they might not know the future, but nothing is ever a surprise to you, Lord. And that you don't ever allow an assignment or a promotion or a deployment that is not filtered through your loving hands. Lord, I pray today that you would give them a perspective shift and they would see what an opportunity you've given them to be on mission for you as you move them around. Lord, may they realize that you are the only thing that can be held on to. And Lord, you are steady and secure. And Lord, I just ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you.
I so appreciate all that you sacrificed being a military spouse. I feel like we got an education today and understanding of the impact truly of what military families go through. So thank you.
And I'm getting my Marco Polo app going right now.
Wow, that was an amazing experience to hear from Beth. Just what this journey was like for her. 25 years of military service, raising a family, most of the time on her own. The transitions of Brian coming and going with deployments and assignments, and how difficult that was and how wonderful it was and all the things. And, it was like, I feel like we got an inside view
Right.
into what military life is like. And I think a lot of us don't know that because we're not living it. But it sure gave me just a tenderness toward those that are serving and those that have served. I've always admired it, but now I feel like I have a whole new level. And I so admire Beth's ministry too.
And her passion.
Yes. Her ministry, she works for Campus Crusade, and her ministry is specifically to military couples and wives, and they do that together.
God's using her and Brian in mighty ways. When Beth was talking, one of the things that she shared was when there was an issue that she needed Brian's help with. He's deployed or he's gone on a training assignment, whatever. He's not there.
Right.
In how they really learned how to talk through and communicate.
Right.
How she needed help or whatever that looked like. Because it brought me back to earlier in our marriage. I was traveling full time with my dad, Gary Smalley, doing his marriage event with him. So you were home. You were with our kids as they were young. And I just remember those seasons where, I'd be at the hotel room. I'd had just a great dinner. We were laughing, maybe saw a movie. I'd get home, call you, just whatever had gone wrong, inevitably it hadn't happened. And you're frustrated. And I remember just how hard that was for me because I was away. I felt helpless. I didn't know how to respond. I just wanted to fix something. And yet, more than anything, I think what I learned is beyond just the solution, just how much you really wanted me just to acknowledge that, this was hard, that we're apart, and, it was my job. I mean, we needed that. And yet just how important it was for me just to lean in and care about how you were feeling and what that was like for you, beyond just do this or do that or solve it this way.
Sometimes I needed you to solve it, but mostly what was helpful in those times was to have you just acknowledge it, as well as send the message. And that could have been done in many different ways, but send the message that you're not alone.
Yeah.
That even though we're separated, that you're in a different city, I'm at home with the kids, that you're not alone, I'm with you. And just that brings so much comfort. Even over the miles, like I care that you're hurting.
Yeah.
I care that it's been a hard day.
Yeah.
I care that the kids have been terrible. Your children have been terrible. Or that your car broke down on the side of the road with, all 3 kids loaded up. And by the way, I had a really great dinner.
And I saw a movie that we need to go see.
Or the best was when you were in New York City and you called me and said, "Oh my word, we just got front row seats to this amazing Broadway play." And I literally was sitting on the side of the road in July, Arkansas heat with a broken down, your truck was broken down.
Yeah.
And, or maybe it was a flat tire. I can't remember, but I just sat there going, I am so happy for you. So happy for you right now, because I hate my life.
Yeah.
But I can imagine these military spouses, wives who are home with kids alone, and some don't have family nearby.
Yeah.
And thank goodness she talked a lot about building community with others that are in the same season that you're in.
Yeah. I just wish it's one of those moments I wish I could go back to the younger me on those phone calls and coach the younger me.
I would like that too.
Right.
It might bring some healing.
Yeah. To I know this is pushing your failure button. You feel helpless. You're not sure what to do. And so you're personalizing all this instead of any of that. Instead of reacting to her, why don't you just lean in and tell her, she's alone.
Yes.
And thank her for the doing what she's doing, and just say, tell me more about that. So I wish I could go back and coach the younger me.
I would like that too.
Yeah. But I appreciated Beth's encouragement to military couples on how to kind of navigate when you've got to just deal with conflict, or you got to deal with something's gone on. So that was great insight. Well, one of the things that we wanted to point out is that Focus on the Family, we have a ton of resources to help military families. We stand behind our servicemen and women and the warriors who keep the home front going as well. So thank you all for your service to this great country.
Yes, thank you so much for your service. And I mean that from a whole new place of understanding what you all go through and always admired your service. And I thank you for that. But having a spouse that is gone for months at a time can make building a connection even harder.
Right.
Big events like birthdays, graduations, anniversaries are often missed. So we encourage you to pick up a copy of Beth's book, Another Move, God. She really dives into scripture and offers 30 hope-filled and practical encouragements for military wives, all gleaned from Sarah's story in the Bible.
Yeah, and if you're not married to a soldier, I tell you, this book would make a wonderful gift for a friend who is.
Yes.
And we'd be happy to send that to you for a gift of any amount. And you can find all those details as usual in the show notes. And if you know someone who is in the military, send them a link to this episode. We're sure that they'll appreciate the gesture. Well, welcome to another episode of Date Night Disasters. I always love this because we've had some huge disasters as we've gone on date nights, or even celebrating 4th of July, fireworks, holidays, parades. All of that is just ripe for any sort of disaster. So as you think about our 33 years together, what's maybe a 4th of July themed kind of disaster that we've had?
Well, it wasn't all disastrous, but we were speaking in Ocean City, New Jersey, and we were super excited because they have all-you-can-eat crab. So we ate all-you-can-eat crab legs and then proceeded to go and ride a roller coaster that has the greatest, G-force?
Yeah.
Of any roller coaster in the country. And let's just say that after eating all you can eat crab legs, that didn't go so well. Riding this roller coaster.
There was some relief for us, maybe not just those around us or under us, nearby us.
And so we did that, which maybe the timing or the order of that wasn't the best. But then we wanted to sit out on the beach and watch the fireworks, which we had done previous years, and it was fine. But they had some issues with teenagers on the boardwalk that summer. And so we were sitting on the beach, just, our nice little family. And there's these just hordes of teenagers. And what they started doing was letting fireworks off in the middle of these crowds.
Yeah.
It wasn't safe.
Like throwing these big black cats, little poppers, right into the crowd.
And it was terrifying, actually.
It was.
And so this crowd would move to and fro, and the police would come in, and they were right in the middle of all of it. It was terrifying. Yeah. And I will say that was not my favorite 4th of July.
Well, I would say my very favorite 4th of July memories is when we would go with our family to my parents who lived in Branson, Missouri. And my dad's best friend, Jim and Patty Shaughnessy, the Shaughnessy's would always come, and we just would have this huge just family reunion with family and friends. But my dad and his friend would go buy the real fireworks that you see, not like the little ones that are in the little fireworks stand.
And it's legal there.
Yeah, you can do all that. But they look like these huge mortar rounds.
Yeah.
And so we would be on the dock because it was overlooking a lake. So we'd go down to the dock by the lake, and we'd set these things off. And we would end up in the biggest firework wars. And there would be times we would set off these huge fireworks and it'd, fly all the way up, and then it wouldn't go off, and it'd come all the way down and explode right next to us. And we'd have to dive into the lake. We did that for years. And the food, the firework battles, just all of it. I'm so miss doing that. That's some of my favorite memories.
And actually, your dad baptized me one 4th of July.
He was just dunking you under the water, by the way, because I think because of the fireworks, your hair was on fire.
No,
You didn't
he
know
baptized
that?
me
He
in
did.
the Taneycomo River.
That's right.
So a very sweet memory, but many, many great memories from Branson on 4th of July.
Yeah.
So whether it's getting coffee, walking in the park, going out to dinner and a show, we just want to encourage couples to spend good quality time together. Have fun. Go on dates.
And be intentional about stoking those romantic fires and connecting, because that's really what's most important. And no, like we've just shared, not every date night or experience together is going to turn out perfectly. But we've shared other date night stories before, and we've asked you to call in and share your date night disasters with us. So here's what listener Lydia had to share.
Hi, Greg and Erin. I'm calling to tell you about my date night disaster. My husband and I were engaged at the time, and it was our first Valentine's Day together. He lives 30 minutes away from me, so to be extra sweet for our first Valentine's Day, he drove all the way up to my apartment at 6:30 a.m. before work to surprise me with flowers and chocolates. After his 30-minute drive, I get a text saying, "Hey, can I come in?" He'd been knocking on my door with no answer. I didn't answer because the fire alarm had been sporadically going off in my apartment complex since 3 a.m. I tried to wait it out and go back to sleep, but I just couldn't. So I got my cat into his carrier and took us down to sleep away the rest of the morning in the quiet of my car. So here was my adorable, sweet fiance standing at my apartment door holding chocolates and flowers when I walk up the stairs to greet him with my crazy hair and morning breath in my pajamas, holding my cat in his carrier. What a way to celebrate our first Valentine's Day together.
That morning breath.
Oh,
Wow.
You gotta love it.
That's hilarious. Yeah, that you're in the car with your cat. But there's nothing more miserable than a fire alarm going off repeatedly.
Right?
No
But
fun.
That's the stuff that we remember. That's
Yes.
such a fun part, I'm sure, of their love story now.
Yes, what a great story they have to reminisce about. So those are the kind of stories you'll tell your children, and that's what we'd like to hear. If you have a silly, funny, memorable date night story, share it with us. We'd love to hear it. So just leave us a voicemail when you go to our show notes.
Well, let's move on to our weekly Q&A.
Today's question is from a listener who left us a voicemail, and she has requested to remain anonymous.
Hey, Greg and Erin. Me and my fiance has been listening to your podcast, and it's helped us so much. And I thank y'all so much for it and doing this and just allowing everybody to learn from you. My question is how do I deal with my anxiety and my worry over something my fiance is going through? He's going through a lot of health problems right now, and it feels like it's distancing us, and I can't be there to help him or do anything. And I'm praying daily, hourly, every second that I can, and I just feel so much worry and so much anxiety over it. And I don't even know what my question is. I just ask for your help and guidance over this time. This season. Thank you.
Well, we're so grateful that you called in. And it makes total sense that you love your fiance. You deeply care about him. You want to spend the rest of your life with him. So, of course, as he's going through these health challenges, of course, that's creating anxiety in you because it feels so uncertain. You're not sure what to do. How do I fix? All of that is going on. So it makes total sense that you're experiencing that anxiety.
It sure does. But of course, we're going to encourage you first and foremost to check in with you and really figure out. So I'm feeling anxious and worried, but what else? What else am I feeling? What else am I fearing? Because I'm guessing this taps into, you said that there's been some distance between the two of you. And so I wonder, are you feeling rejected, abandoned, fearing being rejected or abandoned? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But really just without judgment, just being curious, checking in with you, going, what is going on here? What am I feeling? What am I fearing? What do I do when I feel and fear these things? Do I shut down? Do I retreat? Get anxious? What does that look like? But what do I really want to feel?
Yeah.
And so really getting clear on what is the desire of my heart here.
Yeah, because so often we always bury our emotions alive. And so whatever is stirring at a deeper level for you, I mean, all that's being buried alive and it's there. And oftentimes that comes out in the form of anxiety or depression or anger. I mean, something. Our body just has a way of trying to release these deeper, more painful emotions. And Erin, that's why I love what you're saying. Take some time to really write down, to identify exactly that I'm feeling helpless. I'm feeling powerless. I can't fix this. I'm afraid that maybe, the health problems are going to create, a short relationship for it. I mean, whatever, whatever's going on for you, really spending that time. There's a way in which when you actually put a name to how you're feeling, your body relaxes. There's just an interesting way that when I can say, I'm feeling helpless right now, I'm feeling afraid for our future together, I'm feeling whatever it is, that your body just can relax and it doesn't try to have to work so hard to get all those emotions out.
And I would also say it's recognizing, so your fiance, the person you probably care most about in life, is hurting.
Yeah.
And I know as we've walked our daughter Annie's journey out, that before a surgery, she's had 18 surgeries. Before a surgery, I am so anxious and I feel so helpless and out of control. But often I acknowledge that, but then often I will say, but I am so grateful that I get to walk this with her.
Yeah.
And that's the gift you're giving your fiance, that you are walking this with him. He's not alone. He might be pushing away a little bit, or maybe you're pushing away, maybe both. But it really is recognizing, wow, what a gift you are to him walking through these challenges. And I would say part of that is setting patterns in your relationship of what do we do when we walk through hard times together. First, we show up and care for our own individual hearts, and then we communicate about it. And so I would say it's super important, once you have done that work, to really figure out and get clear with yourself about what's going on inside of me, to ask him when would be a good time to check in. Because this, again, you're training your relationship for the future. You're laying groundwork now for what the relationship is going to look like. What patterns do we want?
Yeah.
And really letting it be okay. Training the relationship. We're going to talk about hard things, even when hard things are happening, and letting him know how you're feeling, that you care deeply, that you're really anxious about what he's going through, but you want to bring him into that, but you also want to lean in with him. And how can we stay connected during this time? Maybe we're praying together. Maybe we're checking in at the end of the night. I don't know the full circumstances, but really figuring out how do we stay connected?
Yeah. And I love that Teddy Roosevelt quote that says, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And there's a beautiful order of how to show up when someone is going through something. We first care, we first lean in, we first just hurt, kind of like Jesus wept. He first, when he got to Lazarus' family, he just cried with them, just hurt with them. And once they knew that he cared, then he solved it. And so even often that order of saying, hey, first and foremost, whenever you're going through these health challenges, I'm going to lean in and just care. I'm just going to be present. I don't even have to say anything. I'm just going to hurt with you. And then maybe there is something that you might want or could be helpful, some sort of solution. We can figure that out kind of on the tail end. But always make the priority, I'm going to first lean in and just be present, be with you and hurt with you.
Yes, and you're not alone. And I'm here for you to walk this journey with you. So thank you again for your question. And we'll be sending you your copy of the book, Crazy Little Thing Called Marriage. Thanks again for participating in the show.